What I wanted to just show you all a little bit is some of the stuff that we found out in Ireland when we were there. And of course, where we went to is Blanchardstown, which is the town, or back then, where Edward Lane I lived. In 1840, there were fewer than 200 families in Blanchardstown. So it's a little village outside of Dublin. And now, of course, it's connected to Dublin, sort of like a suburb. But we went to St. Bridget's Church, which is a church that has been there since 1836. Edward Lane I was born 1835. We don't know where he was born. We just know that he lived in Blanchardstown. But in any case, that church has been there. Now, what we do know is that he lived with a family, the James and Anne Matthews family. And the reason we know that is because Edward Lane II, he went to Blanchardstown in 1919, I think, and he saw on the census of 1841 the names of the Matthews family and the name of his father, Edward Lane I, as being a border with the Matthews family. Now, he wrote his sisters back in the United States about what he found and some of his observations and some of his conclusions about Blanchardstown. And that is in the letter. Now here, these documents, of course, you can't see them from this angle, but I'll get a closer up of these and add to the video. What this one here shows is the transcribed letter of Edward Lane II to his sisters, and this right here is where he has the names of the Matthews family, the father and mother, and then all of the children that were in the household in 1841, including Edward Lane. And here it says Edward Lane, 6 years old, visitor, attending school, cannot read. He's the only one in this list here who is attending school. Then there's some other names here, and these are boarders, so they're living with the Matthews also. And they're just, there's a laborer, there's a dairy boy, another dairy boy, another laborer. So all this was the Matthews household. And this was, until this trip, was the only actual record of the Matthews and of Edward Lane in Ireland. Now, we still don't have any additional information on Edward Lane, but what we did find during this trip is actually the baptism records of the Matthews families, some of the Matthews children. So these here show their copies of the baptism records of different years actually, from St. Bridget's Church, the big church that's right there near the downtown of Blanchardstown. And in these records, so we went to the church, we asked the secretary, listen, we're looking for information on Edward Lane I, our great-grandfather. He lived with the Matthews, and we gave the lady some of the names from Edward Lane II's letter. So sure enough, she went back in the records, and she came back with this list over here with the names that she did find of the Matthews children. She did not find Edward Lane. Then we asked if we could see the records. So then she brought these records over here, and we took copies. And here, when you look at these, you're going to see the names. And the names that are here are of these children together. Edward Matthews, born in 1830, Bridget in 1836, Anne in 1838, and another Bridget in 1840. Now, in Edward Lane II's observations from the census, these two children are not in the census. This Bridget and Anne are not in Edward Lane II's list, but Edward Matthews is in this young Bridget is. So presumably the older Bridget and Anne might have died before the 1841 census. We don't know. But it was quite a finding, and we were quite excited about this finding, that what this does is it confirms that the Matthews family, number one, were Roman Catholic. Number two, were part of that parish, the St. Bridget. Now, we sort of assume that because of the proximity, geography, being such a small village, most likely they would have been, but we never knew that for certain until now, where we now have copies of the records of the Matthews children having been baptized in St. Bridget's Church there in Blanchardstown, which also we can draw the conclusion, obviously, that Edward Lane the first, having lived with the Matthews during the exact time when their children were baptized, he then would have participated in the life of that church. Now, there's some significant information that I'm going to leave for another clip about that church and about the priest at that church during those years. So for now, that's the one piece of information. One other significant piece of information that we found is what is found in these documents here, which again, I'll get closer up on. But what this page here shows is actually the record of James Matthews. This is a record of land occupants in a certain geographic area. So it shows an area in Blanchardstown. It has the name James Matthews, and his name is stricken out and replaced by another name, which means that he either moved and then another person occupied that residence at that date. Now, this is about 1855 or 1856. And those records were not found at the church, but they were found at a place that's called the Valuation Office. It's a place there in Dublin where they keep records of the properties and occupants. That was done for tax purposes, but it's going back all the way back to 1855 approximately. And then there's a whole nother set of records, also land records and occupants records, that is called Griffith's valuation. That the Griffith's valuation is actually available online for free, but the records after 1855 are not available online for free. So, but we went to this office where a person there, very helpful, actually found James Matthews. Now, what that means is that looking at the map, this map over here, we were able to see the area. This referred to in the map as Area 7A, where James Matthews lived. And that area is less than a mile from the big church. So then, of course, we went back over there, we drove. Now it's all built up in nice little homes. There's a canal over here. It's a 50, I think it's 52 acres. Now, it doesn't mean that he necessarily controlled all 52, but he lived within those 52 acres, and that is precisely according to the land records that are available there at the valuation office. So the conclusion is, number one, like I mentioned before, about the Matthews being part of that parish. And number two is sort of pinpointing the exact area where they lived in Blanchardstown, very near the big church. So that is all for this clip. And what I'm going to talk about next is something about the priest that was there in Blanchardstown for 20-something years, which is exactly the time that Edward lived over there. So there's some conclusions that can be gleaned from that. And so we'll see you in the next clip.